Hello, Nanowrimo. I am Grant Faulkner, Executive Director of Nanowrimo, and thank you so much for joining us today on this special Double Up Donation Day webcast. We are hosting Double Up Day because we want people to either catch up on their word count if you're behind, like me. I'm going to write a lot after this today, or bound ahead, which is totally what I advise. Build some cushion between you and your word count targets. Yeah. So it was great. I was looking at chat. It's going crazy in our chat room. So keep the questions coming in. Catherine Grip, our producer, is going to take them, and she will give them to me, and I'll ask them to Marissa later on in the webcast. But first, I'm going to ask her some questions. And I want to congratulate everybody because we, as of the 8 o'clock hour, so I know we've written more now, but as of at 8 o'clock, people had written 26,348,512 words. The challenge for today is for the whole NaNoWriMo community to write 130 million words. We think we can hit that. We wrote 126 million last year. And we've raised so far nearly $25,000 as of 8 o'clock, which is a good. We're making good progress towards our goal of $150,000 for the day. This is our biggest fundraising day of the year, so super significant for us. And just so you know why we have to ask for donations, we are a tiny nonprofit, and we're serving this huge world of writers. In fact, this year we're going to have 500,000 people sign up to write with us in all of our programs, including 100,000 kids and teens in our Young Writers program. And we have this mantra: everybody's story matters. Everyone has a story to tell, and everyone's story matters. And this is like the heart of NaNoWriMo, and that's why we want to keep everything free, is we want to make it accessible so that everyone can explore their creativity, embrace themselves as a creator, because we feel that when you're creative on the page, you're also creative in your life, and that's what we need to make the world a better place. So thanks so much for joining us. I know you want to hear Marissa's wisdom on writing, and she's got a lot of it to share, so I want to introduce her. Marissa Meyer. If you don't know her, she is the author of 5 novels that make up the Lunar Chronicles, including, she wrote the first 3 books, at least rough drafts of them, Cinder, Scarlet, and Caress, in NaNoWriMo in 2008. So about 150,000 words she wrote that year. So she definitely has a lot of wisdom to share. Here's the cover of Cinder. It's fantastic. And she now has a new series, Renegades. And the second book in this series, Arch Enemies, actually is coming out in a few days, November 6th, I believe. And she's a member of the NaNoWriMo Writers Board. And there are rumors that she might even be part cyborg. So welcome, Marissa. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. So good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I also want to say that in the office here, we have a nickname for Marissa. We call her the patron saint of NaNoWriMo. She's super kind and super generous in so many ways since she wrote those novels in 2008. And for the last several years during Donation Day, she's made a $10,000 matching donation. So for this hour, from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, Marissa is generously matching donations up to $10,000. So please donate. And we're a lot of our Donation Day chatter is happening on Twitter and Instagram. So check out those hashtag double up day. So let's jump into questions, Marissa.
Ooh, I'm ready.
Yeah. The one thing about writers' bios is that they're always, we list books, right? The books we've written, the books we've published. And I'm always curious about the writer's journey, and especially yours, since I know one part of your journey was obviously NaNoWriMo in 2008. So can you tell us, when did you decide to become a writer, or that you were a writer? And then who were you in 2008, so that we can kind of imagine your first NaNoWriMo experience?
Oh gosh. Oh God, my entire journey. Well, when I was 3,
those are the best stories.
Yeah, true. We're going way back. You asked for it. I always had this big imagination. I loved stories. I loved being read to as a kid. And so I started coming up with stories when I was 3 years old, and I would dictate them to my mom, and she would type them up for me, and then print them out so I could illustrate the pages. And so I wrote my first book when I was 3, called Rosie and the Rosebush, about this girl who stumbles into this magical rosebush and ends up in this whimsical world full of rose creatures and has an adventure of some sort. So that was kind of my first writing experience. And
I feel like that set the theme for all of your books.
Yeah, right. No, there's some similarities. Yeah. For sure. And it just kind of continued. I loved telling stories. I always had fantasies and daydreams going on in my head. And at some point, I don't know how old I was, but at some point I realized that this was like a job that people did. And you could get paid to write books. And I thought, well, that's genius. I should definitely do that. And so I pretty much always wanted to be a writer growing up in my whole life. When I was a teenager, I fell really in love with an anime called Sailor Moon and got super into writing fan fiction, wrote tons of fan fiction all through high school and college. And then I did my first Nano in 2006 with a fan fiction. I did Nano 2007 with an attempt at an original novel, but I never finished it. And then 2008, I had this idea for this series of futuristic fairy tales, and I was so smitten with the idea. I thought there was so much potential. And so I had this goal of trying to write 150,000 words and trying to draft the first 3 books of that series. And I was really super serious about the goal, in part because I'd heard about this contest that was happening, that the local area writer who clocked the most words that year was supposedly going to win a walk-on role in an episode of Star Trek. There was like this new Star Trek series coming out. And I thought, I have to do this. I have to, try to write the more words than anybody. And so that made 150,000 my goal. But I didn't win. I was like 5th or something. But then that Star Trek series never ended up happening. So in the end, I wrote my 3 drafts, and yeah.
There's a Star Trek series waiting for you out there.
There is. I feel like if I tell that story enough times, eventually some producer in Hollywood will hear it.
Yeah.
And be like,
we got to get you on Star Trek. You earned it with 150,000 words.
Thank you. Yeah, but I was like, you asked what did my life look like during that year. I was working full time. I was an editor at a small publishing house here in Seattle. And I also was going to school for my master's degree and taking a couple classes toward that. So it was a really, really busy month. I look back now and I can't even fathom, like, how was that possible? But we did it when there's a goal.
I want to say, so you were very busy that month and you wrote 150,000 words, but just so viewers know, we were talking about, so your book is coming out, you're leaving for a book tour that's like a week and a half or 2 weeks, traveling all around, giving interviews. And this is for inspiration. So Marissa's very busy, but she is also writing a novel during this NaNoWriMo. And I think you said you're shooting for 70,000 words.
70 to 80. I hope to finish this draft. And I think I have about 70 to 80,000 words to go on it.
That's great inspiration for everybody out there who's trying to double up on their word count.
You can do it.
You can do it. You can do it. I remember when NaNoWriMo writer Hugh Howey, he was doing a big kind of worldwide tour. And he said he was writing at like taxicab while waiting for taxicabs, or like 5 minutes before he went and gave a talk, which I find very difficult to do. But I think
that's inspiring. I don't need perfection. Like, I don't need to be sitting in my beautiful quiet office. I can write on airplanes. I can write in cafes and whatever. But when you're preparing for something else, it's really hard to switch those gears.
Yeah.
So I really admire anyone who can do it.
Yeah, but I admire you for writing 70,000 words in a busy month. And you have children too. So do you I am curious though, you said just in terms of like time management and figuring out ways to write during the month, do you always kind of just write with a routine, like a couple hours in the morning, or do you fit it into those little, like I call them the nooks and crannies of life? Like
I do. Yeah, no, I tend to fit it in, especially this month, where I'm really serious and very inspired by the community and the goal that we're all setting for ourselves. So I'll take it a lot more seriously this month, as far as, getting up early before my kids are awake to write, or staying up late after bedtime, and finding those extra spaces of time. In my normal day-to-day life, like, I keep office hours where we have a nanny come to watch the kids during the day. So that's my time to be in my office. There's still a balance between finding time to do the actual writing versus, preparing for book tour and doing interviews and blog posts and social media and kind of all these other aspects of being a published writer. So you still have to find ways to protect that writing time because there's always something else calling to you.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, Arch Enemies is coming out November 6th, I believe. I would
Yes.
love to hear you tell us. Oh, there it is. Everyone, look. Tell us about Arch Enemies.
Yeah.
Why are you excited about it?
So this is the second of the Renegades trilogy. And so I don't want to obviously spoil Renegades for people who haven't read it, but the series is about a world in which superheroes are real. And this Gatlin city where this story takes place is pretty much ruled over by this syndicate of powerful superheroes called the Renegades. And the series focuses on two main characters. We have Nova, who is a girl who has been raised by this group of super villains called the Anarchists. And they used to be in power. The Renegades dethroned them, and now they're trying to find ways back into power. And Nova has reasons to despise the Renegades. So in the first book, she manages to infiltrate their ranks in an effort to try to bring them down. Meanwhile, we're also following Adrian, who is himself a renegade and happens to be the son of Nova's top two enemies. And the two of them, they start to develop feelings for each other, while at the same time, their alter egos are becoming arch enemies.
Wow, this sounds great. And you're writing basically. Are you publishing more or less a book a year?
Well, we're back down to a book a year. For a while there, it was 2 books a year,
Oh,
or
wow.
like a novel and a collection of short stories, a novel and a graphic novel. So for a while there, I was having 2 launch days every year, but this year it's 1, and I think next year it's going to be just 1.
Well, I just want to hold it up because here's how thick it is. It's
I
not.
know, they're huge. They're huge. I write ginormous books.
Yeah, this isn't 50,000 words. What is this? About 120,000?
Renegades was about 150.
150. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You keep impressing me. Well, cool. Well, I actually love this quote by I guess he was 19th and 20th century novelist Somerset Maugham, and he said, "There are 3 secrets to writing a novel. Unfortunately, nobody knows what they are." So, but I know you do, though. So
yeah, I've got it all figured out.
yeah. So let's pretend at least one of these secrets, especially as it relates to NaNoWriMo. What would you say it is?
I would say something that I tell myself constantly, I always have to remind myself, is that you can make it better later. It is so easy to let yourself get hung up on, finding the perfect way to describe this moment, or finding the perfect way to end this chapter, the perfect line to start this scene. We're always trying to make things perfect. But you can't always make it perfect. Sometimes you can't even make it good. But if you just write it and move on, then you can come back and you can fix it later. You can make it better. You can work on making it perfect. But something you hear in NaNoWriMo circles all the time is that you can't edit a blank page. First, you have to have something to work with. And so that's something I really try to take to heart. I'm constantly reminding myself, like, it's not about making it perfect now. Just get it done, and you can come back and work on it later.
Yeah, that is such a key lesson, and it's amazing how every NaNoWriMo I have to remind myself of that.
Yeah, no, me too. Daily,
yeah.
I have to remind myself.
Yeah, I have to say, nope, fix that later. It can wait.
Yeah.
It can wait. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I have a number of tricks now where if I write a sentence and I know it's horrible, I'll just put in bold or like in caps lock, fix this, make this sentence not suck. Or if I need to go research something, okay, bold, figure out, how many bees are in a hive or whatever it is. And then come back and do that nitty gritty work later.
Yeah, research can be definitely distracting. I almost went down yesterday. It was very seductive. It said, Grant, go do hours and hours of research.
Yeah, no, and I love research. There's always a part of me that thinks, oh yes, I get to go find out more information about this, and it is a temptation for sure. I try really hard to separate it. Like I do all of my writing, and then just like make a list of things that I need to research, and then when it's not writing time, I'll like just go through and check off that list. Okay, now what do I need to research? Now what I need to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm curious, I crowdsourced some questions, and one person asked this as well. Especially, you're so prolific, and you're both, and you're also writing a series. And I read a quote from R.L. Stein once, and he said the reason I am as prolific as I am is because I outline. And he said
Yeah.
he does like a
Mhm.
week of heavy duty outlining, and then he writes the books. And
Yeah.
so, do you outline, or do you pants, or how have you grown?
I'm an outliner, and I love hearing when I have something in common with R.L. Stein. He is such an idol. No, I am definitely an outliner. I admire writers who don't do the outline, because to me that sounds terrifying. And like the idea of staring at a blank page and not knowing what needs to happen next, I just completely freeze up. That petrifies me. So I always start with a fairly detailed outline. I know the main thing that has to happen in each chapter, and the general plot progression, which is not to say that it doesn't change, because it always does. You're writing something and inspiration hits and it takes you off in a new direction. But having that outline makes it really easy for me then to either change the outline and fix it to match what's changed, or to have this goalpost to kind of lead me back on track. So I love the outline.
That's interesting. So the outline, it gives you sort of like, well, I guess a degree of certainty, but you also feel like you can go out. It doesn't hem you in other words.
Exactly. And I also like used to, back when I was doing my first NaNoWriMos, I was very insistent on always writing my books chronologically, and I would never skip ahead. These days, I skip around all the time. So if I feel really inspired to work on chapter 32, then I can go and do that. And I feel confident enough in my outline to know that it's not just going to be wasted words, and I'm not going to get to a point where, oh, that chapter doesn't even matter anymore and we just need to cut it. Although that does happen sometimes. But for the most part, it allows me more freedom to kind of jump around in the story.
Yeah, I really recommend jumping ahead. I feel like that serves me really well, like to know that
Yeah.
I can do it.
Because sometimes you just want to like write a big action scene, or like, okay, it's time to write some kissing. Like sometimes you just need a break.
Yeah, totally. And those scenes, I always feel like then they kind of replenish me somehow. Like
Yeah, I agree. And you get a little bit of that momentum and your word count going. And yeah.
Yeah.
Are you an outliner?
Uh, so I have a theory. I'm a plantser. I think I lean towards pantsing, but I'm trying to outline more.
Okay. I
This
feel
year
like every time I talk to a pantser, they always say, I'm a pantser, but I'm trying to be an outliner.
this is my theory. I think pantsers tend to be insecure that they don't outline.
Yeah, I
And
can see
when
that.
I think I've just outlined in some ways the wrong way, because when I've outlined in the past, I felt very, I guess I'm a rules driven person in some ways. I feel like I have to write exactly towards the outline. And I think
Yeah,
the way that you're approaching it is the best way, is to still allow your intuition to inform the story, and to know that the outline is just kind of a blueprint that can change. And
yeah.
so that's
For
what I'm trying to do this year, a little bit
Yeah,
more.
I don't know many outline writers who, just like really stick to the outline, like refuse to let themselves veer off course. I think that we all, even the ones who, I mean, some people write outlines that are like 100 pages long and like have everything broken down. And I've tried that method, and I can see like this way, there's no guessing where you have to go with it. But even then, there's still going to be times when a new idea pops into your head, or a character says something that you weren't expecting them to say, or there's always going to be that little bit of that sprinkling of magic dust that you have to allow.
Sprinkling of magic dust. Keep everyone, viewers, honor the sprinkling of magic dust. That's
Yes,
part of
exactly.
it.
It's an important part of the process. Very scientific.
Well, it's interesting you brought up like the 100-page outline, because somebody just told me that James Patterson usually writes about a 25-page outline for his novels, and that seems like a really thorough, long outline to me. How long are your outlines, or how involved are they?
It varies. It kind of depends on how much time I have to write and revise. The less time I have to write and revise, the longer my outline becomes. Um, if I'm just following my normal process, then an outline's probably, I don't know, in the 10 to 12 page range. When I wrote Renegades, I was under a very severe deadline. And the outline for that turned out to be about 50 pages long.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but it was like, because I had the outline, and it was every chapter was broken down. Like, then they go here, they have a conversation about this. This is the result of that conversation. I mean, it was very like exactly what was going to happen from point to point. And then I was able to write the book incredibly fast, because I could just sit and I'd already figured it all out. So that was kind of refreshing in a way, but also exhausting to make an outline that detailed.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, I just spent last Sunday afternoon brainstorming an outline, and I was reading Jessica Brody's book, Save the Cat for Novel.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing that was liberating for me is that I was viewing the outlining process really as a brainstorming process, not as a, I don't know, it just felt a little bit more freeing. So,
Can see that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. My guess is that you don't believe in writer's block.
I don't. It is an accurate assessment. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you tell people when they say, because this is probably the most common question of it from any writer, right? Is like,
right. No, it comes up. Yeah. Where do you get your ideas, and how do you deal with writer's block? Those are the top two.
I bet somebody out there on Double Up Day, they are not doubling up because they feel like they have writer's block. So what would you tell them?
Right. So for me, first, let's set aside like let's assume that your writer's block is not a result of like something dramatic that's happening in your family or your life, or you're struggling with depression or some other issue that has its own things that need to be dealt with. If it's just you're going about your normal day-to-day life and you feel like you're stuck and you're telling yourself you have writer's block, I feel like it's a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, that you, by saying, I have writer's block, you're almost giving yourself permission not to write. I'm not capable of writing right now, so why would I even try? Which is, of course, the exact opposite of what you want to be telling yourself. So for me, if I'm feeling stuck, or I just really don't feel like it, and we all have days where we just really don't feel like it. I have a number of strategies that I use. I know, for example, that I'm always capable of writing 100 words. It's nothing. I can write 100 words in like 3 minutes. So I might set that for a goal for myself. Like, just sit down, open up the document, and write 100 words. And if that's all you get done, then you can move on with your day. Or another thing I'll do is I'll set a timer for like 10 minutes or a really short, easy period of time. And like, okay, my fingers are not going to come off the keyboard for this 10 minutes. And then once the timer goes off, if I don't feel like doing it anymore, then I can step away and do something else. And I found that 99% of the time, the act of like actually sitting down at my computer and opening the document and getting back into the world, that's the most difficult part. And then once I'm actually started and actually going, then it starts to flow again. So for me, getting started is always the most difficult. And so if I can find these ways that makes it seem painless and easy, and there's not all that pressure of like having to sit and come up with something genius right now, then that's usually all that it takes for me to get over it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated because I've led literally hundreds of word sprints at this, maybe thousands. And so my theory, the reason I don't believe in writer's block, everything you said, that's exactly my point of view. But every time I've done a word sprint, and oftentimes with people who don't view themselves as writers, and just a 5-minute word sprint with a prompt, I've never seen anyone not write.
Right.
So my theory is there are stories, there are words, there are sentences in our head, and you just got to crack open the door a little bit and let one of them out. And then one sentence usually leads to another one. Like you said, you write 100 words, you might end up writing 10,000 that day.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. Sometimes you just need to crack open that door. I love that analogy.
Yeah. Well, let me see. I'm going to go from some of the crowdsourced questions. Abby Ray, this kind of applies to what we were talking about. It's a little bit different angle on writer's block. She wants to know, what is the hardest part of a book, the beginning or the ending? And I wanted to add the middle.
Because the middle yeah, I love that her question didn't include that.
Yeah, exactly, because the middle is my tough part.
Yeah, no, the middle is absolutely the hardest part, at least for me, and I think for most writers that I've talked to, because the beginning is, you're so excited, you have this sparkly new idea, and you have all these things that you want to do with this story. a lot of times for me, I'll already have an idea of what that opening scene is going to look like. And so the first maybe like 20 to 30 pages, 20 to 30,000 words or so, those come fairly easily. And then you get to the middle and you realize, oh, I still have like 50,000 words to go, or in my case, like 100,000 words to go. And now what? You have to start filling it with what exactly? And so a lot of people get stuck there. For me, that's a lot of where the outline comes into play. By the time I reach that middle part, I have an idea of what are some of the obstacles that my character is going to face. What's kind of the driving force that's pushing them through the story? What are they trying to accomplish? And so I can draw on that to get me through that middle. But it always feels like writing the middle takes forever. And then you get to the big climax at the end and it gets really fun again. And suddenly all the subplots start to converge and things get really exciting and intense. And then by the end of it, I'm usually have a pretty good momentum going.
Yeah, they don't call it the muddy middle for
the muddy middle. Yeah.
I heard it referred to it as the muddle. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I think sometimes people think that once you've published a book, and especially published several novels like you have, that that writing just becomes easier and easier, and that you do not have an inner editor to reckon with, or of anguish. Do you have an inner editor that you reckon with at this point?
Oh, of course. It's funny. I actually was on a panel of authors at a festival here a couple of weeks ago, and I put, and a lot of times in the audience, there's tons of aspiring writers in the audience. And so there was a lot of questions about writing. And I mentioned that exact thing, that a lot of times people see published authors and assume that we have it all figured out. And everyone on the panel starts laughing, it's like, because we know it's not true. We don't have it all figured out. So yes, I absolutely still have an inner editor. I'm still plagued with self-doubt, self-consciousness about my work. The idea that at any moment people are going to realize you're a fraud and you've just been faking it this whole time. Or you start a new project and cannot for the life of you remember, how did I do this before? It happens all the time. I don't know if there's a point in someone's career in which that goes away. I would love to think that there is, but so far there's no sign of it for me. But you just have to keep pushing ahead. And then also the more books you write, at least I become confident in knowing that when the doubts start or I reach the muddy middle and feel like giving up, at least I know that it's a part of the process and that I will eventually be able to get past it. So there's that to say for having some experience behind you.
I was going to say, I recently read a quote from Maya Angelou, and this was in her later years. And she said, after all these books, after all these awards she's won, after reading the poem at Obama's inauguration, she still felt like she was pulling the wool over people's eyes, that she wasn't the real thing. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Someone so talented. Like if Maya Angelou has self-doubt, then there's no hope for the rest of us.
I mean, I think it's like you said, you just have to, you develop, I don't know, a certain type of resilience, or you have the tools to like kind of deal with that inner editor maybe a little bit more than when you're beginning.
Yeah.
But
I think if nothing else, you at least know that it's normal. Like you're not alone in it.
Yeah. And this brings me to my next question, something that I think is very important about what NaNoWriMo is and what we do to help people, is we support this big, huge community of 500,000 writers around the world. And this is my favorite time of the year because I can go on #NaNoWriMo and it's just like, I cannot keep up with the tweets.
Yeah, no, constant.
Yeah. So does the community, how would you define your writing community? And does your writing community help you get over, these blocks or these obstacles that come up?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for not just for having a goal, but for sharing a goal. And I believe there are statistics that prove this, that if you tell even just like one person about a goal that you have, your odds of succeeding in that goal go up incrementally, or exponentially, or whatever the word is there. And in Nano, like you put it to be public about it, whether you create your NaNoWriMo page or you join a writing group online or in person, and you share your goal, like, this is something that I want to accomplish, this is something that's important to me. And then to also have other people who are also trying to accomplish the same thing, who can cheer each other on, host word sprints with each other. If they're lucky enough to live in a community where you can actually like go and sit with people and write, that's always very inspiring for me. So I definitely think that it's really important. And that's one of the things that I love most about NaNoWriMo. It's not just the preset goal, the 50,000 words in 30 days, which you can really do any time of year. But it's knowing that right now you're one of 500,000 people who are all trying to accomplish the same thing at once. And, there's just something really motivating about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are those psychological studies they've done that if you announce your goal to the world, you're more likely to achieve it. And it's because we're peer influence creatures.
Yes.
We do not want somebody saying, how's your novel coming, and to hang our head and say, I gave up. And so,
yeah, right. No, the shame is real.
Shame. It's shame. Good shame. The good kind of shame.
Yes, right.
So if you haven't announced your novel on social media or to your friends and family in person, please do so. And there's also a community of just other writers. And let me think. So I'm reading these questions here. This comes from, let's see. Sally Sue, say what again? What's your favorite book? Do you have a favorite book that has inspired you?
My favorite book of all time is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. But I would say that Harry Potter comes in a pretty close second.
Yeah. Do you reread those from time to time, or do you
I do. I read Harry Potter most recently, maybe about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And now I've decided to hold off. I will not read it again until my kids are old enough that I can read it with them.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. They're 4 now. I don't really know what the ideal Harry Potter age is. But I'll be ready. I'm so excited.
I don't either, but my only parental advice is my kids read Harry Potter way before I thought they were ready to read
Oh yeah.
books and watch the films. And what was interesting to me is they didn't just read. They had with their classmates, it was like this competition. They were reading them over and over and over again. So they were like Harry Potter scholars, essentially, by the time they were 5th grade. So it was wonderful to watch.
That sounds awesome.
Let's see. So this comes from Rose Gold Rainstorm. How do you balance immersion in your fantasy settings with explanation of what's going on?
Boy, that's a huge question of your personal writing voice. There are, of course, writers who go very in depth into their detail, their world building, the sense of the marketplace, and the sights and the crunch of their boots in the soil. And I mean, there's some writers will write pages and pages of just beautiful, luxurious world building details. And some writers don't do any of that. We're in a market and here's the action. Boom, boom, boom. Personally, I would say that I err more on the side of action and dialogue. I like to generally start off a scene with a little bit of some placing details so the reader knows where we are, what are the surroundings, and then I try to get into the action as fast as possible. But that is, again, that's very much a writer voice thing. There's no really right or wrong reason or right or wrong choice there. Do what feels right for you. And again, know that you can come back and change it in revisions. You can edit it if it sounds like it's too much explanation. You can add more if you feel like there's not enough and your readers are kind of, wondering, where are we? What's going on? You can always tweak it later.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. Ann Holzen has a question. Any tips for people who have tried year after year and never won? So this is a good question here on Double Up Day. So what would you say to them?
I want to know more. I want to know if was it a she? Was it Anne?
She, yeah, Ann Holzen.
And I want to know if maybe she has given thought to maybe what's holding her back. My guess would be that it's a question of the internal editor, and that maybe when she's sitting down, she's letting herself be held back by feeling like it has to be perfect, it has to be good. Do your best to ignore those thoughts and just focus on the word count. You know, especially this, Grant, you mentioned earlier, like trying to build up a cushion in your word count in this first week. That is, if you can do that, that is so the way to go. So don't just aim for your 1,700 words a day here right at the outset. You know, definitely try to amp up those word counts, because that muddy middle is coming. And if you have that momentum behind you, it's going to make a huge difference in getting you through those next 2 weeks. So don't worry about making it good. Just get your word count in, and try to stay focused.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think, sometimes I think like NaNoWriMo is, it's like, it's a marathon, right? It's got like a kind of like sports or athletic, it's athletic writing, put it that way. So high intensity athletic writing. And so sometimes I'll talk to people in their first couple of years, they might write 10,000 words one year and then 20,000 words the next year. And so I think they're almost like in training,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can totally see that.
Yeah. So I tell Anne just to keep writing, keep doing what you're doing, believe that you can get there, and you'll make it one year, hopefully this year.
No, I think, that's a really good point, because we do, of course, all go into this, or so many of us go into this with this 50,000 word goal. And of course, if you don't hit that goal, it can be easy to feel like, oh, I failed. I didn't set out what I did to accomplish. I didn't set out to accomplish this, and so you might let that weigh you down. But ultimately, if you wrote words this month that wouldn't otherwise have gotten written, then you succeeded. So yeah, keep at it. Don't give up. And I hope this is your year, but if it's not, then try again next year.
Yeah, keep trying. And keep trying. I think a lot of people, we have this first 5 days initiative this year. We want everyone to have a 5-day streak to start the month. And if you've missed a day already, don't worry, go for another 5-day streak. Because sometimes when people miss a day or miss a week, I have a tradition of getting the flu exactly now. I'll probably go home and get the flu right after this. And it's tough, but it's not a reason to give up for the whole month. You can get back and just try to set a new word count goal just to keep writing until November 30th. And what might happen is that once you get back and write for a few days, your story might go crazy and you might go way beyond 50,000. So
absolutely, it happens all the time. And I think consistency is so important. Of course, it's nice to aim for these huge, impressive word counts, but even if you're just writing 250 or 500 words a day, having that consistency in the long run can add up to so much more than piling it all in week one and then losing motivation and kind of letting it go into a slump. So I think that the 5-day goal, that's a good one.
Yeah, focus on the 5-day goal. And I was going to say, if you write 10,000 words a month, you'll practically end up with a book this size.
Yeah, that's true.
So don't disparage that. This comes from Alexis Palmer. She asks, how long did it take you to finish Cinder after NaNoWrimo ended? Also, she says, I love you so much. The Lunar Chronicles is my favorite series.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cinder, it took almost 2 years. After I wrote that first draft, was in November, and then I started querying it the August of 2010. So just under 2 years. It's actually interesting. So I, of course, started writing Cinder on November 1st for NaNoWrimo. And when I started, querying agents and got my agent and submitted it to publishers, we also had our first offer of publication came in on November 1st. And then 4 years later, my daughters were born on November 1st. So November 1st is a big, big day for me.
You got to celebrate it in a lot of different ways. It's a 24-hour celebration. Yeah. This is an interesting question. Eliza says, what was your favorite book to write in the Lunar Chronicles? Did one come easier, or do you have affection for one or over the others?
Not really. I mean, they all had parts of them that were, really fun, and scenes that I'd been really excited and looking forward to writing. And then they all had parts of them that were more of a struggle. And so I don't know that I really had a favorite, unless you're including the graphic novels, the Two Wires and Nerve books. Those are probably the most fun I've had writing since I wrote fan fiction. It was just so, it almost felt like writing fan fiction for my own series. And it takes place, after winter. And so for the first time, I really got to show some of the characters being like happy and not being chased, running for their lives for once. And I loved writing the graphic novels.
Gosh, I don't even know if I know how to write happy characters. That's
I know.
a big
It was
challenge.
very unusual, but very gratifying.
Yeah. Let's see. So this comes from Julia Ionescu. Where do you find inspiration when creating your novels? Do you have a secret source of inspiration you go to, or something you do?
I don't.
No?
It comes from everywhere. I actually just gave a keynote speech a couple of weeks ago, and that was like the whole topic of my conversation, or my speech was, because that question comes up all the time. Where do you get the ideas? Where do you get your inspiration? And so like I gave this whole speech all on like the science of creativity and how your brain is always like absorbing all these things from the world around you, and every experience you have and every book you read and movie you see, it all kind of gets jumbled up together. And then once in a while, these synapses form between random ideas and sparks a new idea for a story. And it was a really fun speech to give. And yeah, my point is that it comes from everywhere. Live your life, experience things, research, read, never stop learning, and ideas just kind of naturally germinate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like you, again, it's kind of like that opening up the track to them, like sitting down to write, all that crazy cauldron of ideas and juxtaposition of things will come out. It's an invitation, essentially. Let's see. Abigail Peters, a good question. How do you create realistic characters in an unrealistic world?
For me, I really try hard to. I really want my characters to seem as three-dimensional, as believable as possible, and so for me, that's finding a balance. Of course, as humans, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, we all have fears, we all have goals and dreams. We all have things in our background that have influenced who we are and what we believe. And so I do a lot of thinking about that for each character at the outset, and trying to figure out what kind of background are they coming from? What is their family life like? What are they most afraid of? What makes them happy? What are some of their hobbies or their interests? And it's not like I don't have like a checklist that I'm trying to check every box on every character, but I try to at least figure out some things for each one that's really going to influence their personality and how they're going to react throughout different circumstances in the story.
Great. I've been told that I'm echoing, so I'm going to pause and plug in my headphones. I'm sorry, everybody. Also, sorry that I'm holding up a laptop awkwardly to read these questions. Let's see if this will work. I can't find the jack.
Curious, are all of the books behind you writing guides? What do you have behind you there?
These are real odd assortments of books. There are many writing guides. There are also many novels written by Nanowrimo writers. So we have a lot of those novels throughout the office. So we can't keep up with them all, though. It's an interesting problem to have.
So cool.
There's just thousands of books out there. We don't even know what books are Nanowrimo novels sometimes.
Yeah.
We'll find out about it later. Let's see if this works. All right. I just sound weird to myself now. I hear my own echo. Cool. Do you does listening to music play a part in your writing, and what do you listen to?
So for each book, I do create a playlist, and each one is different. And so you listen to my playlist like when I'm driving in my car, or maybe when I'm doing housework, or those times when I can just kind of let my mind marinate in it a little bit. But I don't listen to it when I'm actually writing. I can't have lyrics and words in my head. I find that really distracting. So usually when I'm writing, I just am in silence, which really freaks my husband out. He doesn't like silence. So he'll come into my studio and like immediately leave because it's too quiet in here. The exception is if I'm writing a really intense like action scene or fight scene, I do like to put on video game music, like a Pandora video game list, because it's just so like intense, and you know you can just like see the battle raging in your mind. So
I
yeah.
love that. I love switching musics for different types of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I listen to really gloomy, melancholic music generally. So
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes I need that action sequence.
Yeah, I
Um,
will occasionally, because I love living in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of rainy days, and I love that. I love writing when it's rainy, and I miss it during the summertime. So sometimes I'll put on just like a rain background soundtrack.
yeah. Well, I was going to say Seattle is one of our wordiest regions every year, so I think
Because we
there's
have nothing to do because it's always raining.
yeah, the rain helps. Bad weather can help your noveling. Um, well, on that note, I'm going to read this quote from Flannery O'Connor. And she says, writing a novel is a terrible experience during which the hair often falls out and the teeth decay. I'm always irritated by people who imply that writing fiction is an escape from reality. It is a plunge into reality and is very shocking to the system. Do you think that's true? And if it is true, how do you make writing more playful and fun and less anguishing?
Yeah, I will say that that quote does not resonate with me personally. I'm sure it does resonate with some writers. Probably a lot of writers feel that way. I am on the opposite side of the spectrum. I do see it as an escape from reality. And I do think that writing is fun, not easy. There's definitely lots of days where it's a struggle and it can be really frustrating. But ultimately, you are creating a world. You get to write about characters who are really interesting and you want to hang out with, and you get to come up with like really dramatic storylines. And I love it. I really think that writing and the act of story creation can be a lot of fun, and so that's definitely the path that I tend to take.
Well, maybe you just answered this question, but Edward Dister asked, what's your favorite part of writing? Is it just what you said?
Mm, I have a lot of favorites. Like my top, my ultimate. So, you know, I mentioned how writing can be very frustrating. And especially like for me, I tend to write books that have pretty complicated worlds, lots of different characters, lots of different subplots going on. And there are times when I'll feel like I've created this huge tangled mess, and I can't get the subplots to align. I can't get these characters' motivations to get them to do what I think they should be doing. I feel like there's something missing in it that I haven't figured out yet. And then out of the blue, you know, that the lightning bolt will strike and that last puzzle piece will fall into place, and I'll suddenly resolve everything, and it will be like this beautiful tapestry that was such a mess a moment ago, and then you figure out that one thing that's going to fix it all. And I love that moment. I live for that moment. And there's a lot of times where I'm worried it's not going to happen, and it always ends up happening. And that's probably my favorite part of the journey.
Yeah, that's great. You know, when he was talking about the anguish of writing and the things you like about writing, even though it's difficult, I recently heard an interview with John Cleese, the Monty Python actor, and he said you cannot have creativity without playfulness. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe Flannery O'Connor needed to hear that, or
Yeah.
or jump into NaNoWriMo, because that's one of the benefits of NaNoWriMo for me is that writing doesn't have to be this exercise in anguish. You know,
Yeah.
that you join the community and be playful.
I think that's really important. I think ultimately, if you're doing this, it's because you feel like you do have something to say. You do have a story inside of you. And there's no reason that it has to be a miserable experience getting that story out. Again, it's not always easy, and we all know that it is work, but you can bring a sense of fun and a sense of whimsy to it. I think doing writing sprints is a great way to do that, and just kind of immersing yourself in that community. And I'll do, you know, even if you just kind of do silly things as a part of your writing process, like paint your nails some crazy NaNoWriMo inspired color, or like get your crazy fuzzy writing socks that you put on when you do your writing, or whatever it is, like find a way to make it more of an experience. And I think that goes a long way in bringing some of the joy to it.
Yeah. Here's a question from, gosh, I lost it here. Oh, this is another one from Ann Holzen. How different was it to write a standard novel versus a graphic novel?
Very different. For me, the beginning part of the process is really similar, like figuring out what my story is going to be, writing an outline, all of that. But for all of my novels, whether I did them during Nano or otherwise, I'm a fast first drafter. Like that's just the process that works for me. And I learned very quickly in doing a graphic novel that I could not write a fast first draft, no matter how much I wanted to, because that's what I'm used to and that's what I do. With writing a graphic novel, it's very much like writing a script, and where you would have, you know, you break it down, page 1, panel 1, and then you have to describe for the artist what that panel shows, and then you dialogue, and then panel 2, describe it. And so as I'm writing it, it'd be every panel, okay, panel 3, and I would have to pause and think, okay, what does this panel look like? What is the reader going to see here? What does the background, what is the scenery? What are their facial expressions? And it just took forever. It'd be like staring at my window for 10 minutes for every single panel. And so there was no fast drafting about it. But then on the flip side, once I had finished that first draft, it required amazingly little revision, which I was not used to at all. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like writing for the panels. Is it a type of outlining? Did you feel that, or?
Yeah, no, it definitely and feels that way. Almost more like writing that really long 50-page outline that I did for Renegades, kind of a very similar sort of idea.
Yeah, so cool. Well, I want to give an update here. As of, gosh, what would it be? The 9 o'clock hour, we raised $32,000, and we've gone beyond 30 million words written.
That's amazing.
And I'm sure a lot of people are writing and they haven't updated their word count yet. So if you're doing that, keep updating your word count so that we can all, you know, kind of see that the goal is in sight. We're nearing the end of the hour here. So I have 2 more questions, and then if the community has other questions, please send them in. I like writing this because we oftentimes like share our best writing advice. What's the worst writing advice you've ever received?
I hate the advice to write what you know. I have lived a fairly trivial, boring life. And if I had written about, you know, my middle class America upbringing, like, how much fun is that? I mean, obviously, good stories can be told in that setting, but it was not the story I wanted to tell. You know, I didn't know anything about cyborgs. I didn't know anything about spaceships or moon colonization, but I was fascinated about those things. So for me, it's much more important to write what you want to know more about or what you're curious about. Don't worry. Don't get muddled down in thinking, oh, I can't explore this topic because I'm not familiar with it. You can always learn.
I agree. The write what you know mantra, or the maxim for writing, it can be very limiting. I had the same experience you did. I was like, well, I haven't lived a super amazing life. But once I kind of got over that obstacle, I realized that what it really means is taking from your life experience and infusing your characters and your story world with that. Whatever that is, the little sparkles of dust I said earlier, perhaps.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna close the webcast here. What is your best? What's your NaNoWrimo rallying cry? What would you tell people to think about for the next, I don't know, what is it, 27 days, or just today?
Stay the course. You know that you have a goal in mind. You're motivated to do it. Believe in yourself and believe in the plan that you've created for yourself, or the plan that NaNoWrimo has created for you, and stay the course. Keep at it.
Yeah, I love that. That is what we're telling people. Stay the course. Don't give up. Keep writing. Even if you miss a few days, you can come back. And thank you so much for joining us. You know, I know you have your kid's birthday party and a book tour, so you are a patron saint. I want to remind everybody that Marissa gave a $10,000 match for this hour, so there's still 5 more minutes to donate.
You can do it.
You can do it. Yeah. So huge,
awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Good luck on your tour, and I look forward to reading Arch Enemies.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.